Hello there, and welcome to Quite So. I am your host, Dada, and I'd like to remind you that this podcast airs every other Sunday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Listen Notes, and RSS.com. I also urge you to visit my website, dadaisms.com, that's DADAISMS.com, to connect to all my platforms and to find out more about what I do. Today's guest is Chaplain Sy Alli, and throughout this episode, we will tackle the serious issues of PTSD, alcoholism, suicide, divorce, and homelessness. And we do this while going through the many life experiences of Chaplain Sy, who is a decorated veteran of the US Air Force, a former professional WWE or WWF wrestler who has also earned a place in the USWF Hall of Fame, a former dignitary protection agent for renowned political and religious figures. And today, Chaplain Sy is working with teenagers and has authored a memoir titled Out of the Storm. Without further ado, let us begin the interview. Hello, Chaplain Sy Alli. I am so glad to have you here with me today on Quite So. I'm looking forward to our discussion on major issues such as PTSD, homelessness, alcoholism, and suicide. But before we touch on these major topics I'm so interested in discussing with you, I want you to give us like a bit of an idea of your background, where you grew up, how you went to the military, your wrestling career, your acting career, and just give us like an overview of your life, so to speak, in a few minutes.
You got it. Well, thank you, Dada, for having me on. It's a pleasure talking with you. I'm here in California and you're in Beirut. I
Yes,
love technology, so thanks for having me on.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I had a pretty colorful life. I must admit, I was privy to see and do a lot of things in my life, but I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, in a small steel town called Farrell, PA, about 60 miles north of Pittsburgh, PA. I had a normal childhood, but I really was fascinated with aviation. I wanted to be a pilot growing up, but actually I ended up going into the military. I went into the Air Force and had a pretty sizable, military career. I went in right out of high school and
Yeah.
got stationed in Europe, and it was amazing being a young kid, having a little bit of money in their pocket and just traveling around Europe. So I got to really see a lot of things. I didn't travel as a kid, so I was really grateful for the military for giving me access to go to London and Paris and Amsterdam and all these, different cities in Europe. So had a great military career.
There
But
was
growing up,
there was no war at the time when you were in Europe, was there?
no, it was
No.
the Cold War. So it
Yeah,
really was the Cold War, which they ended up, giving decorations and citations for after the fact.
yeah.
But it was pretty tense over there.
Mhm.
And when I was over in Germany, Ronald Reagan was the president. So the dollar was really strong over there. The
Yeah,
military really benefited from the dollar to Deutschmark. It was then, the
yeah.
ratio. So we were able to get really nice cars over there. We lived pretty good in Europe, while Reagan was the president. So yeah, I was in Europe twice. I was stationed over there. I was at Bitburg in Germany. And then I went to Minot, North Dakota, Dada, which was so cold.
Yeah.
I suffered more culture shock going to North Dakota than I did Europe. It really, really the
I can
truth.
imagine,
Yeah, it
seriously.
really was. So I got married at a really young age. My first marriage, which I have my oldest daughter, Tasha Nicole. My first wife and I got married in North Dakota at a justice of the peace, and then I got stationed again in Germany, and that's where my first daughter, was born at. So I was really cultured. I mean, as a kid, in the military, you really need to take advantage of seeing things. I knew a lot of my military colleagues never really left the dorms or the barracks, and
Wow.
they didn't get to experience the
Yeah,
culture of another country. So
yeah.
I had some real highlights in my life.
You are an
And we,
adventurer, it seems.
oh, very much so. because Air Force OSI told us, they gave us a briefing when I got to Germany, and they were like, you don't want to go to Amsterdam. There's hashish, there's the red light district. You tell a kid that, I mean, that's going to
Exactly.
even entice you more to go. So I got on we had a tour going up there, and I, went to the Heineken factory. And yeah, we were talking earlier. I really started drinking, not consistently, but my grandfather would sit me on his lap, Dada, and have me taste a little bit of beer. And
Yeah.
as a kid, I mean, I was fascinated with the taste of beer. I mean, so so my grandfather, I knew where his stash was. It was like
Yeah.
in a back room. He had the old crates of beer, and I didn't know how to work. They weren't twist off for sure then, and I didn't really know how to work a bottle opener.
Yeah.
So it took me a couple of weeks to figure it out. And then when I did, I took some beer, and I was just hooked. And I put half a bottle back in and put the cap on, like my grandfather would know.
You wouldn't notice at all. It's lacking
Yeah,
half.
yes, he knew. He
Yeah.
knew. And he made me drink it, Don. I took that thing, and no, he was like, don't you dare tell your grandmother. Don't
Yeah.
you dare say a word. So that's kind of, I mean, I really developed a taste for beer.
Yeah.
So when I got older, it was just a natural progression of me. But I don't,
Yeah.
I just love the taste. And that kind of carried in
And
to
of
my
course,
adult
in
life. And when I
Germany,
got into Germany, I discovered wines. Yes.
yeah. In Germany, they love their beer. They love, especially more than wine, but they love their beer definitely in Germany. So
Yes.
it's easy to follow.
But as a
You
kid,
know.
I only think I drank, yeah, I
Yeah.
just drank beer. But when I got over to Germany, I realized the beer was much more powerful than
Yeah.
Michelob or Budweiser. I mean, it really had a kick to it. So I developed the taste for it. And then, going to like the German Wine Fest, because around the Mosel River and that, there's just great wine towns there. So I developed the taste for that as well. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's really how my foundation for drinking. I mean, going to Europe, I mean, just really that was the culture over there. So I made sure
Yeah.
that I enjoyed the culture while I was over there.
I'm glad. I mean, your adventurous spirit is also obvious when you shifted from being in the Air Force into the wrestling career. So tell us a bit about the wrestling as well.
Yeah, I was a power lifter in the Air Force. Powerlifting it's a little different from weightlifting because you do the squat, the deadlift, and the bench press. There's three events. So I really got hooked on that when I was in Germany and became like nationally ranked. Um, so yeah, I mean, once I got into that, uh, everything really started picking up for me. And then when I was in Denver, I was on leave. I was at the old Denver airport, and I saw WWF, which it's WWE now. I
Yeah.
saw a match in Denver, and I was heading back to Germany, and I saw some of the pro wrestlers at a bar in Stapleton Airport,
Yeah.
and I struck up a conversation with him. And a wrestler by the name of Tony Atlas, he's a big bodybuilder and wrestler, told me, he was like, you got some size. Did you ever think about wrestling? And I'm like, well, I've been a big fan of it since I was a kid. So he gave me the name and number of a trainer
Yeah.
in New Haven, Connecticut by the name of Tony Altimore. So when I got back to Germany, I really wanted to be a drill instructor, but they didn't have any slots for me. So just being impulsive, I ended up getting out of the service just to become a professional wrestler. And
Yeah.
that really cost me my first marriage.
Yeah.
But I did get trained up and eventually became a pro wrestler and then gravitated back to Pittsburgh, PA, which was where my mom's family was. And then that's how the professional wrestling career started.
Before
And
we talk more about the wrestling,
yeah,
why did your first marriage suffer from the wrestling? What happened there?
my wife, Vielka, really wanted me to stay in.
Okay.
I was a staff sergeant at the time. I was really close to getting my next stripe, and she thought, you can have a career out of this. You're doing very well. They love what you're doing. You're making rank. She was like, you should stay in. And really, probably in retrospect, it might have been the best move, but that adventurous thing
Spirit.
in me said, "Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta try this. I at least
Yeah.
got to give it a try." So,
Yeah.
yeah, that affected my
Yeah.
marriage, and we
Yeah.
we separated amicably.
Yeah.
But it was a painful time because I was away from my oldest daughter.
Yeah.
But I started venturing into this, and I had a really good athleticism. I wasn't the biggest, Dada. I mean,
Mhm.
professional wrestlers are, 300 pounds. I was about 200 pounds, but I was very athletic. I looked a little bit heavier than I actually was.
Mhm.
And I was able to do, the acrobatic part of it.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was hooked. My first match, I think I made $20, and I had to give 10 of that to the guy who drove us there. So I
Yeah.
had enough to get a Big Mac. That was
Yeah.
it. People think everybody makes a lot of money in professional wrestling, but when you're on the smaller circuits, you're really not making a whole lot.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
couldn't tell me anything. I was having the best time, and then doing different characters as well.
Exactly. Tell us about the characters, and in the end, you stayed in wrestling for 15 years. So
I
you
was
made
in
it to
for
the
a
big leagues
while.
eventually. So yes, tell us about your characters and some medals you've won or belts or whatever you call it.
Yeah, well, I when I was in Pittsburgh, there was called the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, and that was Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. So I traveled extensively around those three states,
Yeah.
and I became the junior heavyweight champion. And then I ended up becoming tag team champions with a buddy of mine who just passed away, TC Reynolds, who was the American Patriot. So yeah, I mean, it was fabulous. I started doing the Iraqi assassin,
Yeah.
which was a dastardly heel. He was captain in the Iraqi Air Force, and that was really hot at that time frame.
Mm.
So I got a lot of heat in the ring.
Of
One night, I'm wrestling my buddy, and I have the Iraqi flag. He has the American flag, and he's supposed to win. And then he said, so after that, when I'm celebrating in my corner, take your Iraqi flag and hit me with it.
Whoa.
And I was like, yeah, I need for you to feel this pole. I said, he was like, don't worry about it, Si, just whack me. So he did. He was in the corner and I took the flag out and I hit him. And there was a diagonal mark
Wow.
across his back. And the
Wow.
fans went berserk. They
Yeah.
thought I was trying to kill him. He said he didn't feel it, but he could.
Yeah.
He went back to the locker room. He could see the mark. He says, "I told you to lay it in, but people started rushing the ring, and I had to really fight my way. I just ran through the crowd. I was getting pelted
I'm
with
sure.
cans and bottles, and I got into the dressing room, and the promoter came back, and he was like, "We got to get you out." He was like, "Fantastic show, but we got to get you out of here."
Yeah.
So there was like two deputies that had to escort me out of Pontiac, Ohio, and get me onto the highway so I could get back to Pittsburgh.
I
So
can
that
imagine.
you can't be. It's not. You can't get better than that
Yeah.
when you got the people thinking that you really are out there trying to hurt somebody. Meanwhile, we're good friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did, and so it was just nights like that, Dada, that just it made it for me. I mean, I love working where I'm at now, but that point in my life was probably the most fun I think I've ever had. When
Yeah.
you get to act a fool and get paid a few bucks for it, it's actually pretty cool.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then you were also a chocolate playboy and
Yeah.
what
Oh,
else?
that was my favorite.
Yeah.
I didn't know I got married again. My second wife, Alicia, was a TV news executive. And when I was doing the chocolate playboy, she came to come some of my shows, and at intermission she would sell my 8x10 glossies, and I'd charge a buck or $2 or $3 or whatever. And I forgot to. So here's the thing. So as the playboy, I would have like one of the guys that were setting up the ring. They would go and buy women's underwear. Now this it's let me tell you, this gets better. And I would tell them, look for some nice looking women in the crowd and tell them just to throw it in the ring when I get in. I failed to tell my wife that this was part of the show. So
And
she's
what
sitting.
happened?
Oh, she was so upset. She was so upset because it was just part of the show. And when I told her, she was okay with it. But I'm
Yeah.
like, listen, these women actually aren't throwing their underwear in the ring. That's a directive to throw it in the ring. So yeah, I really had so much fun doing that gimmick. And I would throw out chocolate kisses.
Oh
And one
wow.
night I was a little short on money, so I didn't have enough chocolate kisses. And I was throwing them out, and I saw this older woman. She had to be maybe in her late 70s or early 80s. She was sitting at like the third row,
Yeah.
and she said, "Next time, buy some more chocolates," because she was mad at me. And I saw her, and I went under the ropes, and I went to go kiss her on the cheek, Dada, and she turned her face and she kissed me right in the mouth. I'm pretty
Oh
sure she put
boy.
her
Isn't she sassy?
She is. She is. I said, and she got a standing ovation from the crowd. I was like, well played, lady. Well
Exactly.
played.
You played the role
So
perfectly.
she got me good. Yeah, she got me. So it was nice like that. I mean, it
Yeah.
was so much fun. And we got a kick out of the crowd just as much as they were entertained by us. We were entertained by the crowd.
Of course.
I had a fabulous time doing that. But unfortunately, I've had when you're high flying and you're like a high pace type wrestler,
Mhm.
there are opportunities to have slip ups.
Yeah.
And there was one night I was sweating. I had baby oil on,
Mhm.
and combine that with the sweat.
Yeah.
And one of my wrestling mates went to put me into a suplex. And when he lifted me back, I slipped and I fell like directly on my head.
Wow.
And I could see there was people there videotaping the match, and I saw it. And I could see my head bounce right off the mat. And I don't remember much more of the match, but we still went
Yeah.
like another 5-10 minutes, and
Wow.
I don't recall anything. And my buddy who I was with, he was like, I didn't know. He was like, you were still moving, but he was like, you were sluggish. And it was like it was hard for me to pick you up. So actually, I was out, but the
Yeah.
adrenaline is
Yeah.
still keeping your body moving when your mind is not quite
Exactly.
functioning at that time. And that's just how the adrenaline is when you're wrestling in front of, I don't know, say 1,000, maybe up.
Yeah.
I've wrestled up to 9,000 people. So that adrenaline gets you going. And sometimes when you get hurt, you don't feel it until you get out of the ring. That's when you know you may have messed up and had an accident in the ring.
Yeah. Did you have many concussions? Was it only the
I
small
had
ones?
about 10. I
Wow.
had 10 that were
So-
considered, kind of major.
Yeah.
So it happened again like in 2001. And then, so the promoter ended up calling my wife and was like, look, Sy had a concussion. He doesn't want to leave the tour, So I stayed after I had a concussion one night in upstate New York. When I got back to Washington, D.C., I met with my doctor, and he treated professional football players too. And he showed me the brain and he was like, man, professional football players have helmets on. He was like, you
Yeah.
don't have any head protection. He was like, you have one more of these, you can simply die in the ring. And
Yeah.
Dada, that was enough to tell me, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I need to put this down. I didn't want to do it because I loved, and I was just starting to really get a name because social media wasn't big back then. And it was hard. If you didn't have TV, it was hard for you to get that exposure. So
True.
I was just starting to get the exposure when I had to leave prematurely.
Yeah. Well, you were acting during that time as well?
Yes, yes, I was. I met a bartender who was part of a casting agency, and she knew that I was a professional wrestler, and she was like, "Look, you really should get a headshot, and I'm going to give your picture and everything." It was called Nancy Monster. I think they're still active in Pittsburgh because there's a lot of films and movies being shot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So I put my application in, and I got some bit parts as extras. I never really got my speaking lines, so I didn't get
Yeah.
my SAG card.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was in Silence of the Lambs. I was
Oh,
in a movie with Rosie Perez called Criminal Justice.
I've seen
I
that
was
movie.
in, oh my goodness, there was a movie with Nick Nolte and Susan Sarandon. I'll think of the name of the movie. I can't think of it right off. Lorenzo's Oil that
Okay.
was filmed back in Pittsburgh. So I had some visual parts. A
Now,
movie Dead and Alive with Tony Danza and a very new Samuel L. Jackson. And so I was able to do a few things, but I never really got the to get the speaking lines. I really wanted my SAG card. If I could get it right now, Dada, I would go get my SAG card
you never
because it's
know.
something
It's never too
I
late.
know, I know,
Now I'm
I
going to
know.
go and watch these movies again and look for you on the screen.
The only one you could really see me would be Lorenzo's Oil.
Okay.
I've got friends that lived in Wales that took the part and showed it to the Welsh people in
Yeah.
Cardiff, and I was like a mini celebrity over there for
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
having a visual part in the
Of course.
movie. But I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
And that I did modeling too. I had some modeling things that came out of the professional wrestling.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was a fun time. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, too many concussions. I had to leave.
Yeah. And that's when you went into the protection agency detail?
Yeah, well, while I was wrestling, I was a criminal investigator
Okay.
out of the court systems in Washington, D.C. So
Okay.
I couldn't make a living off of wrestling. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't paying any bills for me. It was just something, I probably did better by selling the pictures than I did what I got from from the
Yeah.
purse, from the match. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of spawned off. So when I was an investigator, I was really burnt out, Dada. I was doing a lot of cases,
Yeah.
flipping cases. I do misdemeanors, which I could do really quick. The felony cases required me being in court and testifying.
Yeah.
And then I got a phone call about protection from a company that said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And that's how I transitioned from the investigative work to the actual protection side of it.
Yeah.
And being in Washington D.C. is not a bad place to be as
Definitely.
far as your base, because there's a lot of diplomatic activity. There's a lot of high net worth people doing business in the Washington D.C. region. So that's how I really got my start. And then when people see your work and they see that it's solid, they know that you do your due diligence. My name started getting around.
Yeah.
And then when it was over and done with, I had worked with Vice President Al Gore. When the late former Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev came to the U.S., I was his detail leader
Okay.
for the U.S. Now, he had his own protection group,
Yeah.
but we worked hand in hand with his group when he came to the U.S.
Yeah.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu, former Secretary of State Colin Powell. I mean, I really, really did some work with some high profile people,
Nice.
but I kind of stayed away from the celebrity side of it
Yeah.
because I had enough business, with high net worth families. I worked for Middle Eastern royalty,
Yeah.
the whole bit, and did
Yeah.
that really up until maybe 2020, until I got into ministry.
Yeah. Exactly.
Traveled all over the world. That's why I told you I was in Beirut, loved it, but I was there. You said at the right time
Yeah.
in
The
like
right.
the late '90s. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
That's
I was all over. I traveled on every continent but Antarctica. And if there was
oh.
business there, I'm sure I would have been there too.
Now, throughout all this career, you were drinking, but
Oh
it
yes.
seems you were a highly functioning drinker. I mean, would you say you were an alcoholic or just, you loved your drink? What would
Oh,
you?
I consider myself an alcoholic. But
Oh,
as you said, and that's the key, I was highly functional.
yeah.
I didn't let alcohol really get in the way of my work.
Hmm.
Maybe did it get in the way of relationships? I believe so. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure I've gotten, intoxicated and gotten angry. I didn't consider myself an angry drinker. I
Hmm.
was more a happy-go-lucky drinker, but absolutely considered myself an alcoholic because
Hmm.
I couldn't, if I went to a Mexican restaurant and I couldn't just have one margarita. Oh no, it had to be maybe two or three. And
Yeah.
then the big glasses too. So I mean, I
Yeah.
could put away some alcohol,
Yeah.
but I was functional. It never, like I said, it never got into the way of my work.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of added, when things got a little darker, that added to the depression and the post traumatic stress.
Yeah.
I never really was into drugs. I mean, I might have dabbled with cannabis, but
Yeah.
alcohol was my thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was functional. I don't think I've ever really acted a fool from
Hmm.
drinking. Now there might be family members that say, "Oh no, I remember this time."
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's quite possible. But
Maybe
yeah,
people who
I think
are
that was
people who are close to you would notice, but those who
yes,
are outside of this circle, they wouldn't know how you really are, and so they
yeah,
wouldn't suspect anything.
right. There's a
Yeah,
lot of people said, "Oh, we never saw you as an alcoholic." Well,
yeah,
yeah, I was, and
yeah.
just admitting that, Dada, was a big thing for me
Of
to
course.
come out and say, yeah, I was an alcoholic, and that fueled my depression.
Hmm.
It truly did. It
Yeah,
fueled that alcohol. I mean, alcohol and depression is like lighting a match to gasoline.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it can flame up.
Now you told me earlier that your PTSD began when your father passed.
Yes.
Why would you, what was the trigger? Why would you say it's PTSD, not normal depression?
Well, because PTSD can be formed from events
Mhm.
that happen in your life. And, and I think there's this misnomer that only military people or only, say, law enforcement, or if you're a fireman and you're going into a house and you see charred bodies and things like that. It's not just those careers. Post-traumatic stress syndrome can happen when you experience an event.
Mm,
And when my dad died, I didn't know how to grieve, Dada. And I think
mm,
that because I didn't know, now I know, being a chaplain and being trained to be a grief counselor and knowing the steps of grief, I
yeah,
didn't know that. So I carried that when my dad died. My dad died in 2005,
mm,
and I considered him my best friend. I
yeah,
mean, even when I was married, I mean, my dad, I was very clear with that was my best friend. So, even though he had cancer and it spread to his brain, it was like a 6 month process. By the time he was diagnosed with the tumors, it deemed terminal. So watching him deteriorate,
mm,
I thought that when he passed, I would be able to understand that because I didn't want him to go through any pain. And
yeah,
I watched him go through pain, and that was painful for me to watch him. But when he died, it was very surreal because he died, and I was holding his hand when he passed away. And I thought that would be better for me, but it really wasn't because I continued to call my dad just out of habit,
yeah,
like, weeks, maybe a month after he died, until I'm like, okay, he's not going to pick up that phone. So not knowing how to grieve when he
mm,
passed away, and growing up in a society where men were told, or boys were told, you don't cry. So
true,
when I got spankings or when I got beatings, I was told, don't you dare shed a tear.
yeah,
So, from an emotional standpoint, I figured I had to be strong and hold up for my family. While meanwhile, inside, I mean, I'm
you're
just
torn up.
devastated,
Yeah, definitely.
devastated. And then so that happened, and okay, my father-in-law was a Presbyterian minister, Reverend Samuel Williams George, and he was strong, and that he was always like another father to me. Not really, I didn't look at him like a father-in-law. I looked at him like I had two dads, I had two moms. And he passed away in 2009. So, a span of 4 years, I had lost both of the most influential men in my life.
Mm,
And I was just dumbfounded. I didn't cry or anything. I mean, I was just like holding it in. And it was just festering, and any sort of music or any church hymns were triggers of my dad and my father-in-law. And I went into a dark place, Donna. Even, I was married at the time to Alicia. um, I had, well, I had two kids with Alicia. I had Samaria Hope, and I had Side of Fourth.
yeah,
I just checked myself out. My only comfort was working, being on the road, traveling, to other countries. That was like, I don't want to say my safe space, but that's
distraction.
how,
It was
yes,
a
it was.
distraction. Yeah,
It was absolutely a distraction. So I noticed, that my marriage started suffering with my travel because I upped my travel
yeah,
to really just be distracted as opposed to being at home. And that affected my marriage. So
yeah.
I look at 3 points in my life that really caused me to go under: the death of my father, the death of my father-in-law, and then my divorce in 2014.
Yeah.
And then I left Ohio. I didn't stay. I took a job in the cannabis industry and went to Denver,
Hmm.
and it was high pressure. The cannabis for recreational use was brand new.
Yeah.
Colorado was the first state to do it. And here I am as the director of corporate security for a company that manufactured edibles, chocolates, and things that are late, with THC
Fermented.
base. And
Yeah.
yes, and it's legal in Colorado. So I'm at the top of my game professionally. Personally, when I'd go home at night, Dada, I didn't even know who I was looking at in the mirror. The reflection was so jaded.
Mm,
And I didn't tell anybody.
yeah.
I was exhausted from trying to hide my pain and suffering
Mhm.
from people. I didn't want them to know. I didn't want them to call me out on something. So
Mm,
being professional in the day and making sure I kept everybody safe with the company,
mm,
and then going home at night and just washing it down with vodka.
yeah.
That and it just put me into a dark, very dark place
So do
to
you
where I
feel
said,
that,
I'm ready to leave this place.
yeah. Before we get to the attempted suicide,
Sure.
I want to ask you about, I mean, did you feel that you lost love in your life and because you, in a way, you lost love through death, but then again, you also alienated yourself from love by stepping away from your family. Do you feel this was the love aspect that was missing was what triggered this downward spiral to suicide? I mean, that's the way I see it. So I want to get your perspective on it.
I think so. I really do. I just believe that we had become a little bit more distant. And my then wife would say, when I got home from, say, a road trip or traveling, it took me a couple of days to get reacclimated with my family, and I would, do things with the family. But then the phone would ring, and then I would be back on the road for another assignment. So I do believe, we became a little bit more distant, and I didn't want to share with her my what was going on with me.
Hmm.
I really didn't. Now, in retrospect, could I have said, "Hey, I'm really struggling right now," but I didn't. I
Yeah,
mean, I just drank and had fun with the family, and then boom, I'm back on the road.
yeah,
And there was sometimes I expected maybe to come home and see my stuff out on the curb because I was
mhm,
spending that much time on the road. A
yeah.
couple of those years, I was traveling in excess about 280 days a year,
Wow.
so that didn't leave much time to
Yeah.
be home. And then there was times when, say, when I would be in Brazil and I'm trying to fly home, and my family's looking forward to seeing me, and then I get a call and was like, "Hey, we really need an advance agent in South Africa." So I have to call my family and was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm being diverted. I got to catch a flight from Brazil. I got to go to Cape Town." And then that I thought that would exacerbate our marriage and that would end it, but it was pretty much me who just checked out.
I think it was the disconnect. I mean, usually women, as a woman, I can tell you that
Mm,
with women, it's a disconnect when the woman feels you're not trusting her, you're not, confiding in her, you're just keeping your distance. There's
yes.
no intimacy anymore. This is what kills the relationship mostly for
And
women.
that's I'm pretty sure that's what would happen in
Yeah,
our situation. And
yeah,
if you spoke with my ex-wife, she might have a different outlook on it.
yes,
But I do know that I had checked out.
yeah,
Um, and you're in that position, Dada. You're not thinking.
yeah, yeah,
You're just trying to look forward, and you're
exactly.
not looking to experience anything on the
Yeah.
left or right. I mean, so I wasn't there for a lot of my kids' things because I was traveling. Then
Mhm.
the divorce, I know, affected my kids as well, for sure.
Do you feel that if you had gotten some advice to seek help, to talk to somebody, it would have eased your pain, eased your, or like changed the trajectory of things?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely. But you have to be willing to accept that.
yeah,
And the problem with people who suffer, and particularly those who suffer in silence, Dada, like me, it's hard to ease that out.
true.
Because when after, you know, the attempt and that, people were like, "Oh, I never saw that in him.
Mhm.
I'm surprised. I wish he would have." It's easy for people to say, "Oh, if I'd have known, I would have been able to talk to
Yeah,
you." But if a person is not willing to
yeah,
divulge that, you're not going to know. And that's what made me so exhausted, that
yeah.
trying to keep that from people, it was tiresome.
What's your advice to someone going through what you went through exactly? Not being able to share, bottling everything up. What would you advise them to do if they're listening to us now?
I would just plead with people to be able to open up to it. Because listen, God doesn't save everybody. He really doesn't. And for him to have spared me and then say, "Okay, look, these are the directives I need you to do." I would tell people now, you just got to open up. You have to let someone know. You
Mm,
really do. And and then I hear people who make threats to take their life. That's like an open plea for somebody to say help. It's the people like me who don't want anybody to know, and
Yeah.
they're willing to operate in the darkness. And then when they take their life, people are like, I never saw this.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
didn't see it in, and that's what people said. They didn't see it in me, but
Yeah.
it was there. So
Yeah.
my advice to people is please communicate, open up with somebody, whether it's, somebody in medical field or psychological field, even if it's a minister or an imam or whatever faith you profess,
Mhm.
do try to open up and do try to communicate that you're struggling so that there are people that can help you walk through this.
Yeah. Now we've reached the stage where you have lost all hope. You attempted suicide. Do you want to take us a bit through that experience?
Yes, I had planned. I got to a point I was like, I'm over this. I'm feeling too. I'm in just such a horrible dark spot. I just want out of here. So I picked a day because I was the head security guy of Dixie Brands. We would work Saturdays. Our chefs would come in and make the chocolates on Saturdays. Our office staff wouldn't be there, but our kitchen staff would be there. So I would go in and went in and kicked it with the kitchen staff and tried to make chocolates. And they said, you're a great security expert, but you're no chef. Can you leave our kitchen, please? So I would joke with them and I would leave. And then after the employees checked out, it was Saturday, April 18th, 2015. Once everybody left, I made sure the facility was secured. And I got a big jug of Grey Goose that I had stored away in a company refrigerator. And I was like, okay, I looked at all my cameras. There's no cars in the lot. Only car in the lot is mine. And I took out my Glock 19, which I carried every day, Donna, in defense of others and myself. And I turned that pistol on myself. So I sat in my chair. I had some music playing in my office. And when I put the pistol to my head, I was like, wow, something doesn't feel right. And I looked behind me and I saw my kids' pictures on a shelf behind me. And I was analyzing this. I'm like, man, there's going to be blood spatter on the pictures. So I moved the pictures back
Wow.
and I was like, wow, I didn't drink the alcohol. That's how much resolve I had had. I figured maybe the alcohol would dull the pain or whatever once the bullet hit. But I never even popped the cork on that Grey Goose. I said, I'm going to do this. I don't need to be inebriated. Uh, so I put the pistol in my mouth and I had my finger, I already had a round in the chamber. And when I went to put the last piece of pressure on my Glock, everything in the room went dark.
Mhm.
All the cameras, I couldn't hear the HVAC system. I couldn't hear anything. It was completely dark, completely still. And my first thought was, oh, okay, I did this. Maybe in some sort of transportal thing here, but I did it and I didn't feel any pain at all. I was really surprised that I didn't feel any pain, but I'm like, I'm still thinking, but I don't know. I can't feel my body. I can't feel anything. I'm just in this dark space. And then at that point, I felt the hair. If I would have had my physical being, it would have felt like I had my hair stand on end, like there was an electrical charge or something happening.
Yeah.
And at that point, I could smell the aroma of somebody with me in this space where I'm at. And I'm not sure where I'm at, but the aroma felt very familiar. And it felt like my dad and my father-in-law were in this space. And I'm like, am I in heaven? Where am I? I'm not knowing at this point, Dada, where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I could feel the presence of my dad being like on my left side. And then somebody had a hand on my shoulder, but I don't feel my body. I just feel the presence of two individuals. And I can hear low murmurs. And I can hear my dad saying, "What? This is a horrible idea." And my father-in-law, and very quietly said, "Do you realize?" He said, "Son, do you realize what you're going to leave behind in your wake?" And before I could even answer, a drop-down screen, like an old projector screen, hits, and I see my life from
Wow.
being born, everything through, and then when I'm thinking that the movie's going to be over with, I'm looking at myself in my office with the pistol, and I watched me take my life. I watched me do the shot. I watched the blood splatter on the console behind me, and I'm looking at my body slumped over. And I'm there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what is this, like somebody playing a prank on me? What is going on here? Am I dead, or where am I? And I just watched my body slump over. And then eventually my office, coworkers found the key to my office, which was the security office. So that's the most secure office in the building. Only two keys. I had it. My CEO had the other key. They must have found the key after a few days and got into my office, and they found me. And rigor mortis had set in because 2 or 3 days had passed, and the anguish on their faces. And then they notify my family, and I'm watching my kids and my family react to my death. I didn't know. I was like, I couldn't figure it. My mind was not, I'm like, I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
dead. It was just really surreal, Dada. And finally, my dad and my father-in-law asked, is this what you really want? And I just whispered, I said, no. And then after I said that, all the lights, my cameras, I can hear the HVAC system one by one. All my 78 or 79 cameras lit up one by one. My computer comes back on, and I'm there. I'm soaked. I had urinated all over myself.
Oh.
I had lost any body. It's really, I'm thankful that I didn't really eat that day because I was nervous. My stomach wasn't, but I had urinated all over myself. I looked at the clock. It was 9 p.m. When I had sat down to first put the pistol in my mouth, it was 4 p.m.
Wow.
So 5 hours had elapsed. I'm soaked, and fortunately, I had some gym clothes, so I cleaned myself up. I cleaned my seat. I didn't really want to leave my office. I was scared to death, Dada. And I finally left out. I went home that night, and I was like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 5 years later, 5 years. Now, when I left my office that night, I was still depressed, but I never had an urge to take my life again.
Yeah.
And it was fast forward to 5 years later when I quit drinking. I had a DUI, and I picked up my mom's Bible. It was then that God actually approached me,
Yeah.
and said, that wasn't a figment of your imagination. That was my work. I have work for you. You tried to take that out of my hands, and I have plans for you. And that's when I started writing about what happened. That's when I started coming clean about my depression and what was really going on with me.
Did anyone tell you of a theory? I don't know if you believe in like a theory of having timelines which are parallel timelines. And there's a theory that kind of like, if you're interested in that, that says that you actually killed yourself. You actually died in one timeline, but then, it wasn't meant to be. And so you were moved into another timeline where you could continue your work, a very similar one, so you could actually do what you did. I mean, this is one explanation from the metaphysical world.
Yes, I'm up for any theory because 5 hours had elapsed.
Yeah, it's a
I
long
mean, it
time.
wasn't like I was in a drunken stupor.
Yeah.
There was nothing. I mean, I was completely clean and sober that morning. So I could see if I jugged that whole thing down and I was just in an alcoholic stupor, but
Mm.
I couldn't justify the
Yeah.
5 hours.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had been there for a while because really I was soaked, not just from a little bit of sweat, but
Yeah, yeah,
mostly from
definitely.
just
Yeah.
going to the bathroom on myself.
So,
So I never had the inclination to take my life after
yeah.
that. That scared
Yeah,
the death out
but
of me. It really
what I
did.
find interesting though is that despite this experience, you did not stop drinking. What's the explanation that you spent 5 extra years also still not opening up to anybody? Did you open up? Did you talk about to any with anybody? I don't
No,
think you did.
no,
So
I didn't
five
tell
more
anybody
years
about that.
of keeping things in, of
Yes.
drinking you some more of. So how did you last 5 more years in that state? And that's my question. And why do you think that this experience did not jolt you out of it immediately?
It probably should have jolted me out of it. But it scared me, and I didn't know. I thought if I explained that to people, I thought in my heart of hearts, they would have been like, man, you're mentally off. You need.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to tell anybody about that because I didn't think anybody would believe me.
Mm.
And so I continued to work. I tried to put that so far behind me or tucked under whatever. But I didn't want to have that conversation. I
Yeah.
still continued to work.
Yeah.
I even went to the Olympics down in Rio, and I worked
Yeah.
the Rio Summer Games. So I still was operating professionally,
Yeah.
but I was still drinking. But I definitely wasn't suicidal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, when I ended up moving to the Pacific Northwest, I moved in with friends, and I drank even more up there because it's so gloomy in the Pacific
Mhm.
Northwest. I mean, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but the winters are really dark and the days are long. And
Yeah.
I think that just exasperated my drinking.
Yeah.
And then March 1st, 2020, I had taken a friend to the airport and drove back and was bar hopping on the way back. And I got pulled over. I hit some kids from behind. Some kid pulled in front of me. I didn't stop in time and hit them from behind. And there was a lot of alcohol in my
Yeah.
system. So I got arrested, got handcuffed, went to jail, put in the orange jumpsuit. But my friends came out. They bailed me out. And I told my friends that night, March 1st, it was a Sunday night, that I'm never drinking again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they wanted to laugh Dada
Yeah.
because I was the life of the party. Um, but I stopped drinking. I picked up my mom's Bible, and then just something came over me. God had approached me like a week later into my sobriety and basically told me that was me.
Yeah.
That was not a figment of your imagination.
Yeah.
It was not your time. I have work for you to do. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And he was like, just keep moving along. And so I made the decision to start taking seminary courses.
Yeah.
And then I saw a chaplaincy course. I had gotten my a bachelor's in religious studies, and
Mm.
I saw a master's of chaplaincy.
Yeah.
So I took that, and that was an eye opener for me. That's when I had to to come to accept grief and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because having to take, you're being trained to go through the steps of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I was able to finally do that
Yeah.
after all those years and come to grips with the grief and knowing that death is inevitable. What you're doing during your time is the most important thing. And that opened me up. And then I got my credentials to be a chaplain. And then later on in 2020, I went to work in my friend's cancer treatment facility, and I started writing the article,
Mm.
and then a friend of mine who was an attorney, he was in the cannabis industry, saw my article, and he was like, "Man, that could be a documentary."
Yeah.
So I left the Pacific Northwest. I went back to my hometown of Pittsburgh, PA, to do the documentary, but I didn't have the funds to really do it. The young people were working at pro bono. And I said, I can't do this. I don't have the money to do it. So I ended up working at a high school in Pittsburgh, or Penn Hills, PA. I got an opportunity to be a youth mentor and was working with young kids. And my partner, who was she was the other youth mentor. We couldn't open up. The kids wouldn't open up to us. We go there on a Saturday morning. They got their hoods on. They got their music on. And she said, "Sy, you should really tell them about your journey."
Mm-hmm.
So I told the kids about my suicide attempt, Dada,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, their eyes opened, their hoods came off their heads, their AirPods came out, and they were listening. And after I got done, I was emotionally drained. It was emotional.
Of
The
course.
kids got emotional. I got emotional. And then a young lady who was, I think she was a sophomore at the time, she rolled up her sleeves and showed me the cut marks
Wow.
on her arms where she was self-harming herself. And that's when it hit me. Wow, this is powerful. God has given me a tool to be open, to get kids to open up. And that kind of started my work in schools. But I knew something was guiding me to California.
Yeah.
I was back home in my hometown, but I knew I wasn't going to be there. So
Mm-hmm.
I came out here in 2022
Mm-hmm.
and I went to work for a security company, but they didn't have housing for me. So I slept on a couch in my office for 2 months. So
Wow.
the government, VA, considered me homeless then.
Mm-hmm.
And then the company came after 2 months and told me they were going to shut down.
Wow.
So I could go back to Pittsburgh or go to the Pacific Northwest. I said, I'm going to stay in California. And they were like, you don't even have anybody here.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a homeless shelter. I found the Veterans Transition Center, which is a homeless compound for veterans. And
Yeah.
I went there and I was homeless for like a year. And I thought, Dada, oh, that's the end of me. But I'm a chaplain now, mind you.
Yeah.
And I get to this facility and it was like God said, well, you're a chaplain, right? I said, yeah. He was like, well, you got a ready-made audience. You have all these veterans who have come and just descended on this homeless shelter. Veterans of all types, men, women, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, all these different veterans who
Yeah.
had their own issues. And here I am. And I'm thinking my whole life is ended. I got no money, I got no car. And all of a sudden they gave me an office
Yeah.
at the shelter to work with the veterans. And my roommate, my housemate, was 80 years old. He had a car, Dada. Now, here's the irony of this. He had multiple DUIs, so he couldn't drive his vehicle. So I would drive him around.
Yeah.
And when I'm looking for jobs, I go on Indeed and I see a position for a youth coach with a company by the name of Alevo Learning. And I said, I told my buddy Brad, I'm like, I want to apply for it, but I don't know if I'm trans. He was like, Sy, take my car. You're driving me around.
Mm-hmm.
Take it. So I took it. I got the interview and I got the job.
Yeah.
And so here I am as a youth coach in an elementary school. And I just felt like, okay, I think this is this is what God wants me to do. He
Yeah.
wants me to help young people. And although I'm a chaplain, I have to be very careful in the school because the church and state. I have to be very careful. So they call me coach,
Yeah.
and I was able to work with young kids. I got promoted to a manager, and then I said I really needed the car because I had a territory. My buddy Brad took me to the DMV, and I thought he was just going to handle business. He was like, "Come in with me." And next thing I knew, he gifted me his car.
Wow. That's
He
beautiful.
gave it to me, and I was able to take that job as a site success manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I still work as a chaplain. I still work in nursing homes around Monterey County, but I'm working in schools with young people. And it's almost like I've come full circle.
Yeah.
I love working with the young people. I just turned 65. I'm probably the world's oldest coach.
Not
Um,
true.
but I might be 65, but
Yeah.
spiritually, I believe I'm 21.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at now. I mean, I'm at a place where I can talk to people.
Yeah.
And like you brought up a good question. Well, what advice can you give? And the advice is you got to be open. You got to be honest with yourself. If
Yeah.
I did a speaking engagement, I would bring mirrors in for people just so they could look in the mirror. And I would ask them, what do you see?
Yeah.
Do you know that person? Do you know that image that's looking back at you?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it for years. I
Wow.
can look in the mirror now and really love what I see
Yeah.
because I know how God has worked in me.
Yeah. You reminded me actually, when I used to teach English for several years when I was in my 20s. And so I used to tell my students, especially the females, the girls, that you have to look at yourself naked in the mirror and love what you see. And this is the
Yes,
first step towards, succeeding in life.
right.
This is it. You have to accept who you are, love who you are to be able to move forward.
You
But it's
do.
much easier said than done, isn't it?
Hey, oh, that's true,
Yeah.
Donna. It really is. And it took me, my route to become a minister. It was very circuitous. It was a lot of weaves and wobbles and just I felt like a nomad. I mean,
Yeah.
my grandmother. I tried to run away one time, and I took a bus. I didn't get very far, and I came back. And I got my dad wore me out, man. For he's, and my grandmother was like, "Oh, he's the Bedouin of the family. And I'm pretty sure my grandmother put that curse on me because I couldn't stay still. I wasn't happy in one spot. So I moved from one place to the other,
Wow.
went through 2 marriages, 2 divorces. And now I'm finally at a place where I just feel, okay, I'm settled. This is my home. I'm in Carmel, California. I'm near the ocean. I'm near where, I mean, it's a great area. And I finally have peace and tranquility in my life. So I'm able, if I can help other people with that,
Yeah,
I'm willing and
that's
able.
beautiful. I just want to backtrack a bit into your year of homelessness because, we watch a lot of, on social media, a lot of videos of homeless people saying that they don't treat us like humans. They are treated badly, they are overlooked, people don't even see them on the streets. Give us a bit about the psyche of the homeless person. I'm sure you probably were kind of sheltered in the veteran shelter you were in, and because you also worked with them. But I'm sure you saw many people who were on the streets who came in. Tell me about their psyche, how they are able to cope with the situation, and how can people help them eventually?
That was the really interesting part. One of my roommate who I had, because there was a couple of rooms, and one of my roommates was a West Point graduate, Dada. He was a helicopter pilot in the Army, did, things with the CIA. He was living in a van in Salinas with a chicken, a live chicken. That was his support animal.
Yeah.
And I was like, a chicken? You had a live chicken? He was like, Sy, the chicken was really nice. It would sit on my shoulder. I mean, so the goal for this particular group was to get these veterans off the street. And when they got this gentleman in, he was filthy. He hadn't bathed, and he was my roommate. I was like, dude, you got to get cleaned up. So a couple of us gave him some of the clothes we had. He didn't have any clean clothes,
Mm.
and I saw, wow. I thought my situation was bad, and I'm sure that's why I got placed in there to see other people's situation.
Yeah.
One of my housemates was a decorated Army Ranger, multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. When he came back to the States, he had horrible PTSD. He tried to take his life, but the weapon malfunctioned.
Wow.
And he was a great chef. And I was like, do you think, having these conversations with veterans,
Yeah.
I was like, do you think maybe God was trying to tell you something as well? And he says, I never really thought about it.
Mm.
And here, this man had lost a lot of his unit.
Yeah.
So he saw the day to day, the death. And I was like, how did you handle that? Because I wanted to know a little bit more of how PTSD really affects people.
Yeah.
And he says, I became so numb to death and destruction that I just marginalized it and just tried to make sure I can help my unit to survive and get out of there. There was another veteran who had been abused as a kid by a family member.
Mhm.
This followed him all the way through the military, and him really needing like psychological help.
Mm.
So I'm privy to all these different people.
Yeah.
And I learned, I was like, and homelessness can just happen.
Mhm.
Everybody's just like sailing along, and then one or two things happen in your life, and next thing you know, you're out on the streets.
Yeah.
And I got an appreciation because I thought, when people were out on the streets, Dada, that that they probably had real jobs.
Mm.
Because there was a expose when I was in Denver about some of the people that were out asking for money. Then their cars parked maybe 3 or 4 blocks away, and they've got a home, yet
Yeah.
they're out there. So I was suspicious of
Mm.
everybody. But when I landed in this homeless shelter, I'm like, wow, no, this is real. There are people out there struggling on the streets. And the goal of the Veterans Transition Center was to get these veterans in, get them back to the VA so they can get their medical treatments and things that they needed, give them access to computers so they can get a computer lab, go look
Mm.
for jobs. I learned so much about it. And we were protected a little bit more because we're veterans
Yeah.
and we had these services, but people that don't, I feel for them on the street, and I just hope as a nation we can do a better job on taking care of not just our veterans, but those who don't have anything. I'm really sensitive to that. I can see it, and when I can help, people that are out on the streets, I do. I think I give a little bit more freer now because I understand. I just I said, forget thinking if somebody really has a real job. I mean, if I
Yeah.
see people out there struggling, I'm going to try to help.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for sharing these beautiful stories with us today. Your experience has been rich with pain, but it has enriched us with a lot of knowledge, and your experience is definitely going to help many, many people around you, to
I hope
overcome
so.
their tribulations. Yeah.
I hope so, Dada.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think my mission was really simple. I don't even know if God wanted me to necessarily become a minister and a chaplain, but He just told me, go be impactful, go try to help people. He was like, I'll send them to you.
Yeah.
Even the kids, some of the kids that come up to me, I can see the stress in their eyes and I'm able to talk to them. So He simplified it for me. He didn't make it too confusing. So I know just simply go out, be impactful, go
Mm.
help others. If I can help people spiritually, if I can help people mentally, I'm in the gym, 4 or 5 days a week. If I can help people physically, because
Mm.
it's there's 4 levels of fitness, Dada.
Yeah.
There's physical fitness, mental fitness, spiritual fitness, and financial fitness. And
Definitely.
those are the ones for adults that we really have to be mindful of.
Yeah.
For kids, we can drop off the financial, but having those three, I think, are good for anybody. It's a good foundation to build to be able to uplift not only yourself, but uplift others.
True. True. And now you've written your book, Out of the Storm, and it's out now on
Yes.
Amazon, I think. Yeah, it's
Yes.
wonderful.
It's out on it's Amazon, it's Barnes and Noble. I don't know if you have that over there, but and it's written in multiple languages. It's
Yeah,
it's an audio book, it's an ebook. It's written in Spanish, French, Italian, and Mandarin.
beautiful.
Just for starters. But yeah, you can find it. My website is fitsquad.com,
Yeah,
PHIT squad. FIT stands for prophecy, honor, integrity, and transformation. And I
beautiful.
felt like I've been through all 4 of those.
Yeah, yeah, definitely you
Yes.
have. Well, thank you so much. I hope people would buy your book and get to know your story more in depth through that. I wish you all the best in all your endeavors, and I'm sure you will touch many people's lives beautifully.
Thank you, Dada. It's a pleasure to meet you. And you stay safe over there in Beirut. Thanks for all you do as well.
Thank you so much.